It started with a grainy feed from a second-hand surveillance camera I installed in my backyard. I picked it up cheap from a pawn shop more out of boredom than any real need for security. I had just moved into a modest home on the outskirts of a dying town where the houses sat far apart, and the wind always smelled faintly of old leaves and something I could never quite place like smoke, but cold of the camera wasn't great, but it gave me something to do. I wired it to an old monitor in my bedroom. And every night after dinner, I'd watch the static flicker across the screen. Nothing ever happened. Sometimes a raccoon, sometimes the neighbor's cat slinking along the fence line. I told myself I found the static relaxing, like white noise for the eyes that changed in the second week. When I saw him, it was just after midnight. The camera feed was more snow than image. But there in the center of the yard stood a man. He was tall and thin, too thin, and his posture was crooked like something had been broken and never healed right. He stood perfectly still, one arm raised, waving slowly at the camera. The wave wasn't cheerful. It was slow and deliberate, like a clock pendulum, like he wasn't waving hello, but counting down. I blinked, stared, leaned in closer. The monitor crackled and warped, but he didn't move, not even as the image bent and fuzzed around him. His outline remained perfectly still. The wave continuing, 1, 2, 3, 4, slow and steady. I ran outside. The backyard was empty, just grass and silence. Not even the cat, not even the wind. I told myself it was a glitch, maybe a reflection or a freak trick of light, maybe a smudge on the lens. I checked that the camera was cold to the touch, but intact. No smudges, no dirt, nothing wrong at all. But the next night, he was there again. Same time, same posture, same wave, this time a little closer to the house. His face was blurry, like the camera couldn't focus on it, like it didn't want to. Every time the static surged, his form jittered, like he was being pulled forward frame by something unseen. I didn't sleep that night. I sat and watched the feed until sunrise, and then again the next night, and the next, always the same, always a little closer, until I could make out what he was wearing: a dark coat mottled with ash or mold, and a wide-brimmed hat that drooped like it was soaked with rain, except it hadn't rained in weeks. I tried recording the footage, but every time I pressed record, the feed went black, not like it disconnected, but like the system refused to acknowledge what it was seeing. I tried with my phone, filming the screen, but the image was nothing but static and high-pitched screeching. When I played it back, then came a knocking, not on the door, but in the walls, soft at first like tapping, then louder, more insistent, like knuckles against drywall. It moved from room to room, following me. I would turn off the monitor, and it would stop. Then when I turned it back on, the knocking would start again, always a beat behind the wave, always in sync, like the sound was part of him. I started to lose time. I'd find myself waking up in different rooms, lying on the floor with no memory of how I got there. Once I woke up outside by the camera itself, which was blinking a faint red light, even though it had no light, no power source for illumination. The man's wave never changed, always slow, always counting, always getting closer. And I knew, without understanding how, that when he reached the window, something would happen, something final. I started seeing him in reflections, not fully, just the shape in the corner of mirrors, the shimmer in the TV screen. When it was off, my bathroom faucet once showed his hat dipping out of frame. As I turned my head, I tried to leave the town. Once packed my car, drove straight into the highway, but every road sign was wrong, looping back toward the same street, the same house. The GPS flickered, then went blank, and when I stopped the car, I was parked right in front of my driveway, engine cold, like I'd never left at all that night. The feed showed something new. The old man was not alone anymore. The static on the screen began to change, not in the normal chaotic way, but like it was breathing, like it pulsed every few Seconds, a wave of distortion rolled from one side of the frame to the other, rippling through the trees in my backyard like wind. But outside, nothing moved. I would check every time, and the air would be dead. Still, not even the branches of the old oak swaying behind the old man. The shadows deepened. They had depth to them, unnatural depth, like doorways cut into the blackness of night. I stared at the feed, and the longer I looked, the more sure I became that there were shapes in those shadows, things. Crouching, moving low to the ground, slow, dragging shapes that seemed to melt in and out of the static like oil and water. The old man kept waving, always slow, always the same rhythm. But now I could feel it in my body too, like my heart had learned to beat in time with his hand up, down, paws up, down. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I covered the monitor with a towel, left it like that for hours. And when I finally lifted at the camera, was aimed differently. It had moved on its own, tilted slightly downward, now showing more of the grass, less sky, and closer to the house. I didn't even know the camera could tilt. I went outside to inspect it. The air was cold, sharper than it should have been for that time of year, and I felt watched constantly. I examined the camera. No motors, no servos. It couldn't move. It was fixed into place. But it had moved. I knew it had the angle on the screen. Didn't lie. As I turned to head back inside, I felt the ground under my feet give a strange sensation, soft, like a thin layer of something rotting beneath the dirt. I scraped at the spot with my foot and found nothing, but the grass there smelled off sour like stagnant water. That night the feed showed something I still can't explain. At exactly 2:33, and the screen went black for 2 full seconds, then came back on with no sound, no static, just perfect silence. The image was clearer than it had ever been, like all interference had been filtered away. The old man was now just 10 feet from the camera, standing perfectly still, and behind him dozens of them crouched figures, shapes like humans, but smaller, thinner, too many limbs, too long. Their faces looked stretched, but I couldn't focus on them no matter how hard I tried. Like my eyes rejected the shape. They moved like puppets on tangled strings, jerking unnaturally in circles around him, and every few seconds one would glance toward the camera, but never fully, as if some force prevented them from seeing me completely. I couldn't breathe. Watching it, I sat, their frozen sweat soaking through my shirt, and I knew deep in some buried part of my brain that what I was seeing was wrong, not just unnatural, but an intrusion from something older than fear, older than understanding. The next morning, I found footprints in the yard, bare feet, dozens of them, circling the camera, leading toward the house, then stopping completely just a few feet from my back door. They were small, too small to be adult, but the spacing was off, like they were walking sideways or backward. I didn't sleep that night, just watched the feed and wrote down what I saw. The man kept waving slower, now each movement of his hand taking nearly a full minute, and behind him the figures were beginning to spread out, covering more of the yard, edging closer to the house, their forms twitching like flies stuck in honey. The knocking returned stronger, louder, inside the walls, the ceiling, even the floor, and it followed me now. Every room, every step, no matter where I went, it was like something was mapping my path, tracing my route in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. Then came the humming. It started faint like a mechanical whine, just on the edge of hearing. Then it grew louder, night after night, until it was all I could hear. When a monitor was on, a low voice buried beneath the static, a melody with no rhythm, no origin, just endless repetition, and every time it looped, I felt sicker, more drained, like it was pulling something out of me through the screen. I tried to record again. No luck. The sound would cut out, or the footage would corrupt. My phone started glitching, even when I didn't use it, for the feed battery draining in minutes, screen flickering, showing images I hadn't taken snapshots of my own house angles. I never shot from rooms. I hadn't entered the camera feed, never stopped no matter what I did, unplugged it, tore the wires, nothing. It stayed on cold light humming from the monitor, and the man always waving now, just 5 feet from. The lens, I left the house for a night, slept in my car parked at a rest stop 30 miles away, woke up parked in front of my house again. Engine cold, keys still in the ignition time, on the dashboard frozen at 2:33, and the camera feed was clearer than ever that night. And the old man had stopped waving. He just stood there, arm frozen in midair, and for the first time I saw his face, not all of it, just a glimpse as the static cleared in it. Looked like mine, only older, worn hollow, like something had carved the soul out and left only a shell. And that's when the doorbell rang. The doorbell didn't ring again, just once sharp like a warning or an invitation. I stood at the top of the stairs in the dark, listening to nothing, just silence. So complete it had weight, like something heavy pressed against the walls of the house. I didn't move for a long time. I didn't want to know what was outside the door, because I already knew. I checked the feed again, the old man gone. Just gone, no static, no shadow, no one. The frame showed only the empty yard bathed in strange gray light like moonlight without a source, and all the grass leaned in one direction like it had been trampled, but there was no wind, no sound. I checked the front door through the peephole and saw no one, but the porch light flickered once, then steadied, and when I turned away the feed returned to static, hard and angry, flickering like a strobe it hurt to look at. And deep inside it, I saw frames, only a few at a time, like images spliced into the interference, the hallway in my house, my bedroom door opening the back of my own head. I left the monitor running and walked room to room, checking locks, windows, closets, under the bed, like it mattered. Like locks meant anything, anymore. Everything looked normal, except that the shadows no longer matched the objects that cast them. They were longer, slower, they lagged. When I moved, I tried to call someone, anyone. My phone was dead, not out of battery, just dead black screen. No response. Plugged it in, nothing, no charge, no indicator light, like something inside had burned out, without heat, without smell, just quiet failure. The television downstairs, turn on by itself, white noise, loud, sharp. I found the remote buried under the couch cushions, untouched, but the screen played something else, not a channel, not static, just darkness. And then a man walking through a hallway with red carpet and pale yellow walls, and the sound of something breathing in the distance. The image was grainy, like old VHS, and the man walking wore clothes from another decade, pants too short, tight, too wide, hair slicked back in a style I'd seen only in black and white photos, and every few seconds he would pause, turn around, and wave just once slowly, and smile, the same empty smile the man from the yard wore. I recognized the hallway. After a few minutes, it was my house, or would be after the renovation. The same layout, same furniture, only older more. Faded like a memory someone else had of this place. I unplugged the TV. It kept playing for several seconds before it died. Slowly, sound dragging like a record, spinning down into silence. The camera feed changed again. Without warning, the view had shifted this time from the backyard to inside the house, aimed at the hallway, just outside my bedroom door. I ran to the monitor, stared into the screen, and saw the camera blink as if it had a lid that opened and closed slowly, like an eye watching me watching it. And then the old man returned, not outside, but on the stairs, in the frame in the feed, just standing motionless, not waving now, just staring up at the camera with a face that blurred every time I tried to focus on it. The static curled around him like fingers pulling at the edges of the world. I turned around quickly, expecting him there behind me, but nothing, just air still and dead and heavy. The lights in the house began to dim room by room, like the power was being sucked out. but the monitor remained bright, clear, more real than anything else, the only thing that worked, the only thing that never stopped showing me what I shouldn't see. I began to hear voices, not loud whispers, but steady murmurs like a crowd waiting behind a curtain just out of sight. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard them clearer, then from under the floor, then from the ceiling, soft humming tones that felt like pressure inside my teeth. The knocking returned, but now it had rhythm. 3 knocks, pause, 2 knocks, long pause, repeat, always the same, like a signal or a code. I wrote it down over and over, hoping it meant something I could understand, but it never changed, just repeated like a heartbeat. I couldn't control it. 7 a.m. The power finally went out for real. Everything dead, black screen, no glow, no hum. Just silence. I sat in the dark for minutes, hours, maybe, I don't know. Time felt stretched like taffy, unreal, loose. I heard someone walk past the window and the sound of someone dragging their fingers across the glass, then footsteps upstairs where no one was, and the long groan of the hallway floorboards bowing under weight. When the power came back, the monitor was off, still dark and cold, but the feed was on in my head, like burned into my eyes. Every time I blinked, I saw a single frame, the man standing at the foot of my bed, waving slowly, and behind him the others' faces, blurred mouths open like screaming with no sound. I found the camera in the yard, crushed wires pulled out, bent like it had been twisted by a machine, but the feed still played on a monitor. When I turned it back on, still alive, still watching, and now it showed me asleep in my bed in real time, only I hadn't been in bed. I had been outside holding the broken camera, but there I was lying on my side, covers pulled to my chest, face slack, eyes half open like a doll. I shut off the monitor, walked away, told myself none of it was real, but I could still hear the static in my ears like tinnitus, and I knew I was being watched, not just from the feed, but from inside. The walls, there was something in this house now, and it had always been here, waiting for someone to see it, someone to let it through, and I don't sleep anymore, not because I'm afraid, but because sleep has become a place now, not a state, not rest or escape, but a location somewhere between the cracks and walls, somewhere they can reach me more easily. Maybe it began with a dream, maybe with a sound, maybe with the smell of something burning just beneath the floorboards like hot plastic, and right I woke up, or thought I did, on the couch with the television flashing gray and black, no sound, just frames of faces flickering so fast they looked like one blurred expression of agony, mouths, open eyes, wide skin, crawling as if the film itself resisted being watched. I turned off the TV. It stayed on, not with the usual hum or static, but a slow, low pulse like a heartbeat. And every few seconds the screen glitched and showed a hallway, the same hallway each time, different lighting, different angles, but always the same length, same old red carpet, same wallpaper that peels in one corner. And I always feel like I've walked that hallway before, like it's inside me, like it's been copied from my spine. The security feed changed again, this time showing the crawl space under the house. I hadn't installed a camera there, at least not consciously, but the feed was clear, high resolution, like something had upgraded my system without my permission or knowledge. In the feed, the floorboards above creaked and dust drifted down, and there in the shadows was movement. Not rats, not anything I could name. It slithered, but left no trail. It shimmered, but cast no light. And at one point it looked straight into the camera, like it could see through the lens and into me. I closed the laptop, and the image stayed on the screen, as if the screen had absorbed the moment and was now reliving it for its own amusement. I started hearing my name, whispered from the vents, only when it was quiet. Only when I was alone, only when I stood in the center of a room, perfectly still, and waited, and it never came from the same direction twice. I went to the basement to cut the power completely. Thought, if everything went black, maybe it would stop, maybe the feed would die. But the moment I reached the breaker, the walls began to breathe, slowly expanding and contracting like lungs under the skin of the paint, and the switch shocked me hard enough to throw me back into the water heater pipe. When I stood up, I saw a handprint in the condensation on the steel, too large to be human fingers, too long, palm cracked like dry wood. And it wasn't mine. I tried to leave the house, then packed a bag. Didn't matter what I took, just closed my car keys phone. Useless as it was, but the front door wouldn't open. The lock twisted fine, the handle turned, but the door stayed firm like it had grown into the frame, like the wood was bone now, fused and unbreakable. The windows wouldn't break either. I tried to hammer a chair, my fist, not even a crack, only a low, deep echo like striking the wall of a cave. I began to realize the house wasn't letting me leave, not because of force, but because it had redefined itself. It was no longer a place, but a system, a circuit, and I was part of it. Now part of the feed. The man came back again, this time not waving, just standing at the end of my hallway, not in the monitor, but in the actual space between my bedroom and the bathroom, staring through me like I was transparent, like I was a photograph. He no longer recognized the skin was too tight, too dry, like paper wrapped over sticks, and his mouth opened slowly, not to speak, but to release something, a soundless moan that made the air thick and the shadows longer, and his eyes were just black static swirling, not deep, not infinite, just full of noise. I blinked, and he was gone, but not gone, because the hallway still felt wrong, and the walls had a wetness to them, like breath condensing, like he had walked through them, and left pieces behind at 3:33, and the house began to vibrate softly, barely noticeable, unless you touched the floor with your bare hand. Then you felt the thrum, the pattern, the signal. It repeated and burst like a language of pressure and heat, and when I pressed my ear to the wood, I heard it clearly, a voice too deep to be human, too ancient to form words, but full of meaning anyway. I dug into the floor with a crowbar at the spot where the vibration was strongest and pulled up planks until I reached a hidden layer beneath, old and rotted and covered in symbols burned into the wood, not carved, but seared in looping patterns like circuit diagrams mixed with occult glyphs. In the center was an object embedded in the dirt, a camera lens, black and glassy, staring straight up, not powered, not attached, just there. And when I touched it, I saw everything, not memories, but impressions, thousands of eyes looking through it from every direction, every timeline. Like this house had always existed in this shape, waiting for someone to uncover it, like the lens had been buried, not to hide, but to anchor. After that, the static moved with me, followed me into every corner of the house, into mirrors, into the water, into reflections that no longer matched my movements. And sometimes I'd see myself blinking at the wrong time, or smiling when I wasn't, or reaching for things I hadn't noticed yet. And always just behind me in the background of the screen, the old man waving, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes with both arms, but always waving. I stopped turning on the cameras, stopped checking the feed, but the images bled into other things, into the microwave display, into my phone's lock screen, into the shimmer of glass on picture frames. In windows, the last time I saw my reflection move without me, it mouthed the words, "Don't look away," and I didn't, not even when the lights went out again and the knocking started from inside the closet, not even when the walls began to breathe again, not even when the television turned itself on and the screen showed me sleeping again in a room I had never seen, but somehow remembered. I stopped counting time. I don't know if it's been days or hours since the last light worked, since the clocks froze mid-second, since the sun stopped rising properly, just flickering through clouds like a damaged bulb. Shadows stretch and twist with no source. Now they move against the grain of the room, climbing the walls like mold, and Peeling back the edges of reality, I hear my name whispered in ways that sound like it's being pulled through static, not spoken, just shaped like something that once knew how to speak human, but forgot I walked through the house with the laptop open, because the feed shows things I can't see with my eyes, not anymore. There are doors now in places there weren't before, one behind the pantry wall, one under the stairs where it used to be solid cement now. An opening so. Dark, even light, seems to vanish. Inside it, the hallway camera keeps flicking to a frame that shows me standing still in that dark doorway, even when I'm not there, and the old man is still waving, sometimes closer, sometimes distorted so badly he looks like several versions of himself stacked into one jittering mass of flesh and memory. One version smiles wide, and toothless the other, is just eyes the third, is just an arm endlessly repeating that waving motion like a curse caught in loop. I found pictures in the attic I never took. Photos of a man standing in this house. In every room, one photo per room, his body always slightly blurred, but the wave is perfect, sharp fingers raised, just so like he's mocking me, daring me. To continue, I burned the photos, but the images stayed burned into the wood grain, under them burned in my mind, burned into the camera feed, which I no longer control. It turns on by itself. Now always showing me things I don't remember doing, walking the yard at night, opening the closet, and talking to nothing, digging holes in the basement, and placing things inside them, things I don't recognize. I checked my hands yesterday and found dirt beneath my nail soil that smells like copper and smoke, and something old and wrong and wet and the worst. Part is I wasn't even surprised. I think the camera is older than the house. I think it's older than electricity. It just found a medium to express itself now that it has access, now that I've plugged in its mouth, opened the way it speaks, is through signal, through glitch, through memory fracture. Sometimes I forget my own name, not because I've gone mad, but because the camera gives me new ones and they echo louder than my names like witness. Recorder feeder anchor, I dug onto the house again. Pulled up the second layer of flooring, found teeth, not bones, not fossils, actual teeth buried in a circle, each one marked with a name and a date. All the dates were the same, July 30th. And I think it means something, maybe the date, the signal comes fully through, maybe the date of erasure. The house has mirrors now in places I never hung them. The hallway is longer than it should be, and when I walk down it, the lights flicker in a rhythm almost like Morse code. I wrote it down. It translates to watch, remember, submit, repeat. The old man doesn't wave anymore now. He just stands mouth open as if waiting for something to come out or something to go in, and when he appears now, it's always behind me, always right behind me, just past the edge of vision. I see him in reflections. Even when the mirror shows only me, his presence overlays like an afterimage. And sometimes his arm begins to move slowly, almost unwillingly, like it's being puppet, like the wave is a signal too, like it's not his choice. I took down all the mirrors, but I still see him in water, in the microwave reflection in my pupils when I stare too long at myself in the bathroom, in the camera feed that shows a version of this house that is slightly wrong. The furniture in the wrong place, walls, two smooth rooms at the wrong angles. Last night, I followed the hum under the floor into the crawl space, found a second camera mounted in dirt, completely clean, no dust, no age, perfect, and on its screen was not this house, but another place entirely, an empty field with a figure standing in the distance, waving slower than any human could wave, almost like each frame was being hand-drawn, then fed into the loop. I turned off all power to the house, and the screen still worked, not from battery, not from current, but from persistence. The images now feel heavier, like they leave weight in the room after they flicker, like I'm dragging echoes behind me. As I move, I caught myself whispering something in a language I don't understand into the corner of the bedroom where the old man now appears every night, not moving, just pulsing like a corrupted GIF. And I know he wants me to remember something I've forgotten or something I never knew, but have always carried. I started recording myself with my phone just to have proof of what I was doing, but all the videos glitch out. They show nothing, or they show things I can't watch again, rooms I've never seen, holes in my face. That shouldn't be their version of myself. Standing completely still for hours, breathing backward, I opened one final door last night, the one under the stairs, and behind it was a stairwell that went down not into the basement, not into the earth, but into a place without. Architecture, just shadow, and feedback, just noise and time and smell. And I stood there for a long time, staring down at a stair that never reached the bottom. Something moved far below, something waved, and I felt it like a gust of wind that came up and inside me, as if the motion of the wave rewrote something in my bones, like I became less me and more feed. I left the door open, and now the hum is louder, the floorboards vibrate constantly, and the cameras never sleep. And every frame of footage now contains two of me, one real, one not. And I don't know which is which anymore. Maybe I never was. Maybe I've always been the image waving from the other side, waiting for someone to watch. The static has a rhythm now, like breath drawn too slowly to be human. I woke up with the screen on every screen in the house, the TVs, the phone, the laptop, the baby monitor I never owned, each one showing a different version of my house, as if the feed had multiplied into parallel truths, and in each version I am there. Or something wearing my face. I used to think I was watching the man on the screen, but I see now he's been watching me all along, learning me, repeating me, until there's no difference, no border between watcher and watch, between man and signal last. Night the camera showed me sleeping, but I wasn't in bed, and I wasn't dreaming, and yet I watched my body twitch on screen like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. I screamed at it, but it didn't hear me, or maybe it did, and was pretending. I think the old man has moved and he walks the halls while I stand still. I see him in the corner of every reflection, but now when I turn around, he doesn't vanish. Instead, I vanish a little more, and he becomes more solid, more textured, more familiar. I checked the feed from the backyard camera and saw the hole again, the one I don't remember digging, but is always open now, wide enough to swallow someone, and inside it only blackness, only static, a void that hisses when you lean too close. I played the footage backwards and watched myself emerge from that hole, but not all at once, like the body was being rebuilt part by part, wrong by wrong foot first, then fingers, then eyes placed in the mouth, then the rest. Process not meant for viewing. The camera in the hallway now shows a timestamp from 10 years ago, and it doesn't flicker. It shows me entering a room I've never had, walking into a door that doesn't exist except on screen, and the moment I enter the footage loops. Not a glitch or ritual. My voice is on the recording from the attic, speaking in whispers layered over itself like 1,000 me's, all saying the same word. Not a name, not a language, just a sound that vibrates in the center of the skull until thought breaks. The wave has changed now. Isn't just emotion, it's a command. I feel it when I move, like my muscles are syncing with it, like it's writing code through motion. And every time he lifts his hand, I mimic it without choosing. I found a mirror in the garage that doesn't reflect anything. It absorbs. When I look into it, I don't see myself, but I feel myself pulled toward it, and the old man stand behind me, waving and waving, but not at me, at the reflection that isn't there. I left the house once, just once, walked 3 blocks in dead silence. No birds, no wind, just the sound of screens humming inside every house, and in every window, a flickering old man waving. And when I passed people, they didn't see me, or they saw through me, or they saw him in the grocery store, every monitor showed the same footage me, watching myself, and the old man behind every frame, sometimes replacing my shadow, sometimes my face. I came home to find the house rearranged, the walls pulsing with low sound, the floors uneven, as if the architecture itself was trying to reject reality, trying to rewrite its blueprints into something compatible with the signal. I keep all lights off now, but it doesn't matter. The glow comes from inside the house, from cracks in the walls, from the space under the door, from my eyes. When I look in a dark mirror, they flash like lenses, like cameras. Recording from behind, the static is louder now, full of voices, layered screams reversed. Lullabies begging and chanting and counting something always. Counting, and every number adds up to me. I found a file on my computer labeled Final Frame. MP, for I didn't create it, it wasn't there before. And when I open it, it shows me standing in the hallway, then glitching into a dozen silhouettes, each one breaking off and walking into a different room. I watch until only the old man remains, and he's waving not with his hand, but with mine. He is me. He always was. The signal didn't bring him here. It brought me to him. It tuned me until I was a frequency he could inhabit, until my body became a vessel, an antenna shaped in his image, and I feel him inside. Now, I don't blink anymore. I don't sleep. I just watch. I sit in front of the camera every night, waving for hours at no one or at everyone. The footage never stops. The feed is always live, even when unplugged, even when destroyed, even when the lens is pointed at nothing. It still sees. Someone sent me a message, an unknown email, no subject, no body, only a video attachment. It plays without audio, only an empty room, a chair, a man walking in, backward, slowly turning around, and it's me, but older, skin sagging, eyes black holes, lips moving, but no sound. Then slowly the wave, and I know it's the last message I will ever receive. I record everything now, but it doesn't save. It loops the moment I hit stop. The footage begins again, slightly different each time. A small shift in background and posture and time. And once I saw something moving behind me, something huge and slow, like a mass of roots or veins crawling across the ceiling. I tried to cut the camera feed at the breaker, but when the switch flipped, the lights went out, the screen stayed on, and the old man screamed, not through the speakers, but from inside the walls, like the house was his lungs. And now I breathe his breath. The final night I stood in front of the mirror with no reflection waving at myself or the space where I used to be, and the camera recorded it all frame by frame. I watched myself phase out, not vanish, just shift one pixel at a time until I was no longer in this reality. Now I live in the feed. I exist only in signal, in corrupted frames and static. I am the wave. I am the glitch. I am the thing behind the glass, waiting for someone to stare long enough for the transmission to complete. And you watch the footage. You click play. You stared too long. Now the old man sees you. Now the wave is inside your memory. Don't look away. Only gets worse when you look away. He's already waving behind you.